Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman Powered Up. Now it's time for Bombman.
Time for a big bang!
Bombman's interesting, and I think his voice actor is Ryan Stockert, who has only ever really voiced him in some guy from a random anime that I've never even heard of. Now, something I forgot to mention last part with the abilities that bosses have in normal and hard is that they tend to only use them during the last half of their health bar. I swear I've seen them use it at higher amounts, but that's generally where they like to use it. And I know I mentioned last part that I really like the remixes for the most part. Bombman's music's probably one of the few I don't like, just because the main beat portion I don't feel like it's high enough of a pitch. I think overall most of the music was pitched down a little bit in the game, but Bombman's is the only one that like feels wrong to hear at this pitch. Now, as for my own history with Powered Up, I think I've said it before, but I didn't get a PSP near launch, nor did I get this game near launch. I don't think I picked this game up until maybe 2009 or 10? And it was one of the... I was always just a little bit angry, because if I recall... I forget if it's this or Maverick Hunter X. I think it's this. I have the generic GameStop box art for it from that time period, which I really, really hate. And... I always just remember being confused about why it was such a hard game for me to find, because it was this and X8 that took me forever to find as a younger lad. I want to say in particular with this game, it's that there were less copies of it produced, but I also just know this game didn't sell that well for a variety of reasons. There was a controversy that I'll talk about later on in this own part regarding one of the Robot Masters here in the West. And I know the PSP just wasn't the best-selling handheld. It's still decently well, and it was definitely a good JRPG machine. But for Mega Man games, I know a lot of people were thinking that this game should have been released on, like, the PS3 network and such. And you know what? I do think this game would have been better fit on a PS3, because the classic Mega Man to me just doesn't feel right on a handheld. Even the games built for it, like this Mega Man World series and such, classic Mega Man just doesn't feel right on a handheld. Of course, I say that, but the main version of Mega Man 11 I got was the Switch. Anyway, Bombman stage is fairly standard, nothing too notable about it. Time for Bombman himself, though.
Warning!
Bombs! Don't run off. Let's have a little fun with my explosives.
Bombman, that's really dangerous. Stop setting off bombs.
You should have come the day before yesterday. I had some big boom booms then. Don't cry now.
You shat yourself yesterday, really? Either way, Bombman's actually one of the harder Robot Masters to Mega Buster in this game. Another reason why I tend to not start with him as much as I used to in Mega Man 1. He has a lot of range with his bombs, and they can explode pretty quickly, too. Even touching them hurts. Though Rolling Cutter can actually destroy the bombs themselves in any instance. He has a couple different trajectories he can throw them at, but in general he just tries to jump around you and then throw at you, but he'll always be aiming for you directly. His special attack is that when he becomes vulnerable, he throws a giant bomb that he can either throw directly on top of you like that, or bounce along the floor, which in both cases is pretty hard to dodge, and it ends up taking my life away right here. Could have shot him one more time to kill him, but it would have been a double kill, sadly. Bombman, when going for the Mega Buster, is one of the harder Robot Masters in the game. Though thankfully, you might remember the last part I mentioned that the weakness, Super Arm wasn't very good against Cutman. For the most part, weaknesses still are really powerful in this game. Not quite to the extent of Mega Man 1 weaknesses. I'd more equate them to Mega Man 4 onward style weaknesses, where you still have a good amount of ammo left over, but it doesn't three-shot them or anything like that. Nothing ridiculous. Either way, we get Hyper Bomb for that, which has one major change I'll talk about in a moment. For right now, we're heading over to Iceman stage.
Stop and freeze!
The Hyper Bomb's a bit different in Powered Up in that while yes, it still explodes and can cause damage, unlike Mega Man 1, you can throw it directly at enemies and it will explode on contact. it's a much more useful weapon because of that, too. And a nice little thing they kept about Powered Up, you actually still don't have underwater physics in this game. Because Mega Man 1, you didn't have underwater physics yet, and those weren't introduced until Bombman Stage in 2. The shield enemies here. An interesting thing about them on hard mode is that when you're near them, they'll move at a much smaller range. They'll basically just go one tile away. Iceman Stage is still home to the Yoku Blocks, / reappearing, disappearing blocks. And for the most part, they're actually pretty easy in this game. There's nothing truly ridiculous they have you do, and on easy mode, they're even easier, because I think some of those easy mode platforms are in these sections, which makes it very simple to get through. Though one jump in particular on a later screen is still pretty annoying to make all the same. Iceman, by the way, in this game is voiced by Zoe Slusar, who I think was Goku in GT, and I know her most, similarly to how I know Mark Gotha, who voiced X in Maverick Hunter X, because she was Saisaichi in Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Which, God, I love that series. It's ridiculous on all levels. Now, something that's in this stage that was in the original but is just much more annoying here is the ice physics. You actually have a good amount of momentum for them this time around, and if you try to turn around, like say if you're walking on the ice, you can be standing still trying to slip and slide backwards for a couple of seconds. The way you want to mitigate that is just by jumping a lot. Speaking of jumping, this is one of those really annoying jumps. I'm jumping at technically the wrong time, yeah, but you need to be pretty precise with that. Also notable, speaking of momentum and ice physics, Mega Man does still have a bit of his Mega Man 1 momentum here. They try to keep that a little bit close to what it was, but it's not nearly as noticeable. The helicopter platforms are a bit more annoying this time around because I'm required to do them, because something that new style mode is lacking compared to old style and the original Mega Man 1 is the magnet beam. It is nowhere in the main game, so you need to just jump on these things. Thankfully, they're a lot more easy to get around because they only move around specific sectors of any given screen. Though notably, on hard mode, they fire bullets out of their sides every now and then. Also, because he showed up last part, and I mentioned it back in Maverick Hunter X, Dr. Wily is voiced by Dean Galloway, who was Chill Penguin back in Maverick Hunter X, as well as I think Master Roshi in some of the older Dragon Ball dubs. Either way, time for Iceman.
Warning! Reporting for duty! There's something dangerous up ahead, sir. Oh, freeze it at all costs, soldier.
I don't believe it. Iceman. Even a loyal robot like you.
Well, sir, Soldier, finish your mission! Stop and free!
Haha, get it? Iceman's bipolar. Ha 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 ha. I joke about that, but I actually like that they gave all the Robot Masters unique personalities in this game, because it just adds a bit more character to the world. Iceman's pattern is fairly unchanged. He'll jump up and fire 3 of his ice slashers in a row. However, he can also fire 3 in a row going up, as well as just standing straight on the floor. When he reaches the lower half of his health, his super move becomes active, where he summons icicles that kind of just cordon off sectors of the room, making him harder to hit. On normal mode, he only summons 1, but on hard mode, he summons like 3 or 4, I think.
Soldier down!
Iceman is also one of the most prevalent cases of stun locking you can do in the game, because on normal mode, whenever you hit a boss with a powerful attack or their weakness, they do like a little like, ah, that was nice. But a lot of the time, that stun slash little animation takes up a lot of their vulnerability frames. So it's very likely that the moment after that animation ends, you can just throw out your weapon again and just stun lock them to death, and it's really absurd. Ice Slash is a pretty good weapon. It freezes enemies in place and makes them ripe for the destruction, but you can't stand on them, and it can also freeze certain hazards.
Time to burn the trash!
But now it's time for my favorite Robot Master and my favorite stage, Fireman stage. I love Fireman. And in this game, he's voiced by Roger Rhodes, who's probably the most prevalent voice actor in the game. Because I know he's been all over, like, younger kids anime. Like, he was in the LBX anime, I think in the game. He was a couple of characters in Del Toro Quest. He was Vile in Maverick Hunter X. He was Chibity Crockett in Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Again, everywhere. I think he was also Sting Chameleon back there. In X8, he was Satanist, Gravity Antonian, and Vile as usual. In Command Mission, I think he was Dr. Psyche and Sentis and the Duckbill Mole mini-boss. So again, like a lot of the voice actors in this, from that Calgary studio. Very all over the place in Mega Man. Now, something that I like that Powered Up does that Maverick Hunter X didn't, and it's been pretty obvious by watching it, is that they actually changed the level designs up all the way through the game. It makes the game feel like it's trying to be the Mega Man one, but having its own twist on it, and I love it when they actually do that right. Because to me, I mentioned it back in Maverick Hunter X, that's what a remake should be. There should be enough familiar that you can tell it's definitely like a new version of the old game, but it should have its own spirit and style to it. Like, a lot of the levels in the game have set pieces and certain portions of level design that are quite familiar seeming, but then they put new twists on it, and I love it when they do that correctly. Ultimately, I'll probably go on this again later, but I think between the two remakes on the PSP, Powered Up is the better remake. Ice Slasher is pretty useful in this stage, even without having to take out Fireman with it, just because you can freeze so many of the hazards and just make things easier on yourself. Though thankfully, and I love that Powered Up does this, Powered Up does the thing from Mega Man 8, where you can see how much ammo of a particular weapon you have. And Ice Slasher, if I recall, is one of the more ammo-filled weapons in the game. Not the most, that's the next Robot Master's weapon in my case. But yeah, that's knockback. I think Hard Mode also has more knockback, but don't quote me on that, that might just be my brain playing tricks on me. Knockback in this game isn't too bad, all things considered, though. Just because the level design is fairly flat enough to the point where you don't get knocked off many pits. Nothing can ever be as bad as a Castlevania game or Proto Man in Mega Man 9 and 10. God, that knockback is ridiculous. Alright, we're coming up on the end of Fireman stage here. It can be one of the more dangerous ones just due to the amount of bottomless pits in it. But on the whole, it's pretty doable. And time for Fireman himself, who has also seen a couple of changes from the original game.
Warning!
Really? Fire! Burn! Burn! My justice burns hotly! Evil beware!
Fireman, why are you... I haven't done anything to you.
By the fire of justice, I am certain you are evil! Fire! Oh, fire!
The immediate change is that while Fireman's still pretty quick on his trigger finger, his fire waves no longer leave a little fire residue beneath you when you jump over them, making him a lot easier to not get hit by. Fireman in the original game was probably one of the hardest Robot Masters just due to that, but here he's not too bad. He can still spam fire, don't get me wrong, and his little fire wave ability, that's his special move, can be kind of hard to dodge. Notably on hard mode, what this thing does to change up is that it'll actually go back and forth across the walls at once. But comparatively, he's not too bad. I still died to him though. In fact, I died a lot in this particular playthrough just because I haven't played the game in a long while. Ultimately, he's still one of the harder Robot Masters just due to his spam fire, but comparatively, not too bad. Also, a little detail I haven't talked about much is that I love when you actually defeat a boss and they go flying backwards. If they hit a wall, they have a special animation for it. Either way, now I get Firestorm, which is still probably my favorite weapon in the game. You fire a shot forward and have a little shield circle around you that's really good for getting close up and personal to enemies. Really powerful, good amount of ammo, all things considered. Really like it. And now, finally, what's fire good against? Did somebody say oil?
It's showtime!
Time for us to go for one of the new Robot Masters, finally. And I'll talk about a certain thing that happened with him in a few moments. Now, the notable thing about this stage is that the gimmick with it is that certain platforms are covered in oil, and if you try to walk on it, you get ultra ice physics, to the point where Mega Man slips immediately and falls on his ass. However, your Firestorm, I believe when you're playing as Fireman yourself, and enemies that are fire elemental can set that oil on fire for a couple of seconds, and it does a lot of damage to you if you touch it at that point. Thankfully though, unlike Flame Man's stage from Mega Man 6, it's not an instant kill and never is. Still does a good amount of damage, but yeah. So ultimately, the dodging game is part of the main... dodging is the main part of the game here. Now, Oilman himself, we saw his design there. However, in the Japanese version, he looks a little bit different, and this is going to the controversy I was talking about earlier. When he was revealed, there was a controversy regarding that he resembled blackface. And you can see this very much in his Japanese version, where his coloration's a bit different. His bluish purple is much closer to a purplish black, and his lips are flesh-colored. Yeah, it's not intentional, and intent is everything, but yikes. The Archie comics, when Oilman eventually got introduced, circumvented this entirely by just having his scarf go over his lips. And you know what? Good on them for that, just trying to avoid it all entirely. People also credit the game's low sales due to this controversy. And you know what? It probably had some impact. By the way, going back to this stage, these little canisters right here are the things that can be destroyed by Firestorm. I think there's actually technically 2 kinds of blocks related to every weapon type. As in, there's one Megaman can destroy, and I think there's one that only the Robot Master themselves can do something about. Don't quote me on that. I've actually rarely gone onto the alternate pathways. I think I've only actually beaten this game as 2 of the other Robot Masters, which were Fireman and Elecman. I got close with Cutman, but I just kind of got distracted and never went back to it at one point or another. But the alternate pathways that I mentioned are where a lot of the construction materials are hidden. Because there's a couple of different construction materials types. I believe there's enemy packs and environment packs. My brain is telling me there's a third one, but I don't think there actually is. If you're wondering how you get down there, you need to come into the stage with Elecman. And like I said earlier, last part, a cool thing they did that's also really annoying, you can only really access a lot of the little bonus areas with the Robot Master who the Robot Master stage you're in is strong against. And when you're playing as the Robot Masters, the weaknesses still apply. For instance, if I were playing as Gutsman, I would be able to take out Quickman really easily. But Time Man could be troublesome. Other Robot Masters, it doesn't really matter too much, but the really annoying thing about that is, say I was playing as Cutman against Gutsman, which is probably the worst nightmare scenario, just due to how big that fight is in terms of like physical size on Gutsman's behalf. You'd generally probably only be doing maybe 1 or 2 units of damage. I think it's only 1 though. Either way, it's time for Oilman. Let's see what he's got. His stage is kind of dangerous due to the amount of high damage potential, but again, doable.
Warning!
Ah! Hey, what'd you come out here for? Don't you got a place near your house for fill-ups?
Oilman, let's go home.
You for real? Even if that just slipped out, we are still gonna do this! Yeah! It's showtime!
Oilman likes to jump a lot. That's actually his main method of transportation. When he jumps up in the air like that, he's going to fire 3 of his little oil drip attacks, which he generally tries to aim at you for. You can slip on them, and he killed me there. However, just getting hit by the projectile version also hurts. This is more or less all he does for the first half, but come the second half, he can occasionally use his special ability, where he'll actually get on top of his oil as a skateboard/snowboard, and slide across the screen and then jump up and shoot some more. On normal mode, he only does that once. On, I think, hard, he can, each use of that ability is back and forth across the screen, and he can chain it, I want to say, upwards of 2 or 3 times in a row. I mean, there's some good invulnerability periods this one can have. Not too bad. In fact, honestly, he's probably not a bad first choice Robot Master, but not my kind of style. Plus, it doesn't help that I just really do not like his weapon. It has its uses, but, yikes. Oilman stage overall, high damage potential, even though I think the boss himself isn't too bad. For beating him, though, we get, as I just said, my least favorite weapon in the game, the Oil Slider. You shoot out a little bit of oil, which can do some damage, even though it's pathetically weak. I think it might actually technically be weaker than the Mega Buster. But as you see here, you can get on it and slide across it. That's not too bad for normal enemies, but against boss fights, it is atrocious because you're very likely to just get hit when you try to run into them. I'll show it off, particularly when I show off how Oilman plays later on. But the notable thing as well, you can jump off of the oil snowboard by pressing up at the jump button. It's a very close proximity, but it's the best way to get around, I guess. Either way, with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we'll be heading up to the rest of the Robot Masters before taking a quick detour to look at some other things. See you guys then.